Welcome back to the Uncanny Valley podcast. You've found another deep dive.
Yeah, this is where we take the sources you've given us, the articles, research, your notes, all that stuff.
And we try to pull out the really compelling insights, the things that stand out, those knowledge nuggets, maybe some surprising facts too.
Exactly. Our job is basically to walk you through it, help you see what's key, how things connect, and, why it actually matters.
Like we're turning the pages together, pointing out the bits that really jump out.
Precisely.
And today, we're diving into some excerpts from a real giant of American literature, F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. You've given us some fantastic passages here.
They really offer a window into that time and place, don't they? Our mission today is to explore these specific parts of the story. We'll focus on the key characters, the settings, those moments that are really pivotal.
Right, trying to figure out what makes these first meetings and, well, the later events so important in the narrative Fitzgerald lays out for us in these pages.
So yeah, let's get into it. We're starting right where Nick Carraway begins his story, arriving on Long Island, summer of 1922.
And we'll follow his journey, guided by what the text tells us, through this really strange, vibrant, and ultimately quite tragic world.
Get ready for a world of old money versus new money, simmering tensions, mysterious wealth, and the sometimes glittering, sometimes brittle lives of the people there.
Okay, let's start right there with Nick Carraway, our narrator. He kicks things off with that advice from his father.
Oh, yeah, the famous line, something about his younger and more vulnerable years.
Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone.
Just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had.
Right, and Nick says this really shaped him.
He says he's inclined to reserve all judgments. It suggests he tries to be an objective observer, doesn't it?
It does, though he also admits that tolerance has a limit. He frames his whole story through this idea of trying not to judge, even when, things get pretty morally murky. He even connects this sort of heightened sensitivity to Gatsby later on. Interesting. And what about Nick himself? Where's he coming from?
Well, he tells us he's from the Middle West. His family's been there for generations, apparently prominent people. And importantly, he went to Yale, New Haven, as he calls it.
Just like his father. So he has a certain background, a certain class.
Definitely. But those Midwestern roots are really set up in contrast to the East Coast society he's about to walk into.
He mentions coming back from the Great War, calls it that delayed Teutonic migration.
Ah, yeah, quite the phrase.
He felt restless after the war. So he heads east to get into the bond business. Needs a place to live.
Right, practical need. But he also wants something a bit quieter, more rural than the city.
Yeah, so he finds this place on Long Island, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow at $80 a month.
80 a month tells you everything, doesn't it? Compared to the mansions around it.
Exactly. It's his little perch to watch the super rich. He mentions a dog briefly, a Finnish housekeeper, little details of his simpler life there.
Grounding him before we get swept up in the glamour.
There's also that small moment early on, seems minor, but maybe it's not, when a man asks him for directions.
Oh, to West Egg Village. Yeah.
Nick helps him out, and then he feels like a guide, a pathfinder, an original settler. Like he suddenly belongs.
It's a nice touch. It shows how quickly he starts to feel integrated, even though he's really just arrived, an outsider becoming momentarily an insider.
And this leads right into the geography, which is crucial. The two eggs.
Yes, Long Island Sound and these two unusual formations of land, these enormous eggs, identical in contour, separated by a bay.
But identical only in shape, right? The social difference is huge.
Absolutely central. West Egg, that's where Nick lives. Where Gatsby lives is the less fashionable one, as Nick puts it. New money.
He uses that Columbus story reference about the egg being crushed flat at the end, suggesting maybe they look similar, but one is fundamentally different or perhaps damaged.
Could be. It emphasizes the physical similarity, but hints at the underlying social divide. Across the bay is East Egg.
The white palaces of fashionable East Egg. That's where the old money lives. Established wealth. The Buchanans.
Right. And Nick's bungalow, his $80 a month place in West Egg, gives him that consoling proximity of millionaires. Another one of his slightly ironic, detached observations.
He calls the sound the great wet barnyard, too.
Yeah.
Not exactly glamorous.
No, it kind of undercuts the romantic image, doesn't it? Maybe showing his Midwestern perspective still, or just seeing the raw reality beneath the surface.
So thinking about this for you listening, why is all this setup, the setting, Nick's background, why is it so important right at the start?
Well, Nick is our eyes and ears, isn't he? His background, Midwestern, Yale, relatively modest house, positions him perfectly. He's in this world, but not entirely of it.
And that fatherly advice makes him seem like he'll be objective, or try to be.
Exactly. He's set up to observe, maybe even, to understand, if not always approve. And the geography, the two eggs, it immediately flags the big conflict. Old money versus new money. It's the fault line the whole story runs along.
Okay, speaking of old money, the Buchanans. That's our way in. How does Nick know them?
Daisy is his second cousin once removed. And he knew Tom back in college at Yale. Says he spent a couple of days with them in Chicago after the war. So there's a connection, even if it's maybe not super close.
And Tom Buchanan. What's our first impression?
Physicality.
Yeah.
Immediately. Nick describes him as this sturdy, straw-haired man of 30, hard-mouthed, supercilious manner.
Those shining, arrogant eyes. And he's always leaning aggressively forward.
Yeah, like he's physically imposing himself on the space, on the conversation. And his past as a football star at New Haven is brought up right away, one of the most powerful ends that ever played football there.
Nick really emphasizes his enormous power, that brute strength you could still see under his expensive clothes, straining the laces on his boots.
It's not just physical power, is it? It translates into social dominance, a kind of aggressive entitlement.
And then there are his views. The text is pretty direct about this.
Very direct. It's unsettling. He suddenly starts talking about how civilization's going to pieces, calls himself a pessimist.
And he brings up that book, The Rise of the Colored Empires, by this man Goddard.
He insists on it, doesn't he? Calls it a fine book, says it's all scientific stuff, it's been proved.
And the argument is, well, it's racist, plain and simple.
Yeah.
That the white race is going to be utterly submerged if they don't watch out.
Right. He talks about them being the dominant race and needing to keep control. It's important, I think, to stress that this is presented in the source text as Tom's character, his beliefs. The narrator, Nick, is reporting it, not endorsing it.
Absolutely. It's there to show us who Tom is, the kind of thinking that underpins his arrogance and his worldview.
It's foundational to his character, and Daisy even sort of echoes him, whispers something about needing to beat them down.
Though Nick catches that note of basic insincerity in her voice later. About something else, but it makes you wonder about this moment too. Is she just playing along?
It's ambiguous, but adds to that feeling of unease. It's a really dark thread introduced very early on.
Okay, and Daisy herself. Nick seems quite taken with her, especially her voice.
Oh, definitely. He describes it poetically, full of aching, grieving beauty, something that compelled me forward breathlessly.
Uses words like glowing, singing, talks about her murmurous tricks. It sounds almost hypnotic.
It does, but her personality, her conversation, it seems a bit, artificial, like she's putting on a performance. She claims she's pretty cynical about everything.
And then there's that famous line about her daughter, what she hopes for her.
I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. It's shocking. But again, Nick questions its sincerity later. How much is real bitterness? How much is a pose?
Yeah, it's hard to tell with her. And the relationship between Tom and Daisy, you feel the tension right away, don't you?
Absolutely. Her looking around for Tom, seeming anxious. And then the phone call during dinner.
The mysterious phone call. Pretty clear indication of an affair.
It hints at Tom's other life. The infidelity simmering right below the surface of their perfect-looking East Egg existence.
And that phone call sort of propels us out of East Egg, doesn't it, into a very different place, the Valley of Ashes.
Yes, the complete opposite. This solemn dumping ground located between West Egg and New York.
It's just bleak, industrial waste, ash everywhere.
And looming over it all are the eyes. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg.
On that giant billboard.
Yeah.
Huge blue eyes, yellow spectacles, no face, just the eyes.
Staring out over the wasteland. Nick says they were probably for an ad, then forgotten, left to brood. People read so much into them, God, judgment, the decay of values.
Yeah, they're incredibly symbolic. And the people who live there, ash gray men.
Moving like ghosts through the powdery air. It's here we meet George Wilson.
Described as blonde, spiritless man, anemic, running a failing garage. A shadow of a garage, Nick calls it.
Just drained of life, like the landscape itself. And then we meet his wife, Myrtle Wilson.
Tom stops the car there, and Myrtle comes out.
How is she described? She's not conventionally beautiful, thickish figure, faintly stout, middle 30s. But Nick immediately notices her vitality.
Yeah, she carried her flesh sensuously and had this immediately perceptible vitality, a stark contrast to her husband and the surroundings.
And her interaction with Tom is telling. She ignores George, walks right through her husband as if he were a ghost.
Shakes Tom's hand directly, looks him flush in the eye, confidence, energy, completely different dynamic than with her husband.
Absolutely. And this meeting leads to Tom basically summoning her to the city.
Right. They all end up in this little apartment Tom keeps in New York.
The description's great. One slice and a long white cake of apartment houses. Inside, it's cramped, over-furnished with this tapestried furniture entirely too large. Trying too hard, maybe. Scenes of Versailles you stumble over.
Definitely feels artificial. Myrtle's sister, Catherine. Slender, worldly girl, lots of makeup, pluck eyebrows, those noisy bracelets. Claims she lives with a girlfriend. Very modern.
And the neighbors?
Yeah.
The McKees? Mr. and Mrs. McKee from downstairs. He's a photographer, described as pale, feminine. She talks up his work, his pictures of Montauk. They seem kind of aspirational, or maybe just adjacent to this world.
The whole party feels sort of off. Gets uncomfortable fast.
Yeah, fueled by whiskey. The gossip starts flying. Catherine tells Nick flat out, neither of them, Tom and Myrtle, can stand the person they're married to.
And Myrtle tells her side of marrying Wilson. Reveals her own ambitions or frustrations.
Thought he was a gentleman, she says, but then found out he borrowed his suit for the wedding. Realized he wasn't fit to lick my shoe. Cried all afternoon. It shows her disillusionment, maybe her materialism.
Catherine also reveals that Tom is Myrtle's first sweetie, so this isn't just a fling for Myrtle.
Seems not, adds another layer. And as everyone gets drunker, louder, the tension really snaps.
It's about Daisy's name, isn't it?
Yeah. Myrtle keeps saying, Daisy, Daisy, Daisy. Tom warns her, tells her never to mention his wife's name. She taunts him, repeats it.
And he hits her. Breaks her nose with his open hand.
It's brutal, sudden, violent. Shows his power, his control, the casual cruelty he's capable of when his world is challenged. Ends the party right there.
So stepping back from this whole sequence, East Egg dinner, Valley of Ashes, the city apartment, what's the takeaway?
It's a powerful cross-section, isn't it? You see the facade of East Egg elegance, then the absolute desolation of the Valley of Ashes, and then this cramped, volatile, sort of tawdry scene in the city apartment.
It really exposes the hypocrisy, the moral emptiness.
Yeah, the casual affairs, the class resentments, Myrtle trying to escape her life, Tom asserting his dominance through violence. Wealth clearly doesn't equal happiness or decency here. The city, meant to be freeing maybe, just becomes another place where these ugly dynamics play out.
Which brings us back to West Egg and to the man who sort of embodies it, at least for Nick Gatsby.
Right. We get that first glimpse of him at the end of chapter 1 after Nick leaves the Buchanan.
Yeah, just a figure in the dark, standing outside his huge mansion, looking at the stars. Nick assumes it's Mr. Gatsby himself.
And he sees him stretch his arms out toward the water, towards a single green light across the bay. It's very evocative, mysterious, full of longing. Sets the stage perfectly.
And then, the parties. Legendary.
Oh, the parties. Nick hears the music from my neighbor's house all summer. Describes people coming and going like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars.
The descriptions of the scale are just incredible. Hundreds of feet of canvas, colored lights making the garden like a Christmas tree.
The buffet tables garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvres, spiced baked hams, salads, and the booze, crates of oranges and lemons arriving Friday, leaving as pulp Monday, that juicing machine working overtime.
It's pure excess, designed to impress, to be seen.
The whole atmosphere sounds intoxicating. Air is alive with chatter and laughter, constant introductions that are immediately forgotten, groups forming and dissolving, girls floating around like gypsies. Nick calls it spectroscopic gaiety.
Dazzling, maybe, but maybe also shallow.
That seems to be the implication. And the guests themselves are a mixed bag. Nick mentions those young Englishmen looking hungry, maybe trying to sell bonds or cars or something.
And then there's that list. The guest list Nick supposedly kept on a timetable.
Right. It's not just names. He throws in these little, often ominous details. Dr. Civet, who was drowned. Ripley Snell, who went to the penitentiary. Henry Palmetto, who killed himself. The Quinns, divorced now.
It's like a directory of misfortune clinging to the edges of this glittering world. What does that tell you about the people drawn there?
Maybe that the glamour attracts people whose lives are unstable. Or maybe it reflects the instability of the era itself. It suggests that underneath the frantic partying, there's a lot of fragility, even tragedy. These aren't necessarily happy, settled people.
And Gatsby himself. Still a mystery.
Completely. The rumors are wild. He killed a man. He was a German spy. No, wait. He was in the American Army.
Nobody seems to know the real story. The conflicting tales just add to his mystique.
Nick actually goes to one of these parties, finally. Doesn't even have an invitation, just wanders over, tries to find Gatsby, but nobody seems to know him, or they stare, or they deny he's even there.
Awkward. He feels like an interloper. Ends up by the cocktails.
And that's where he strikes up a conversation with a man about his age. They realize they were in the same division during the war.
Third division, right.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, first division.
Yeah.
They talk about France. It feels like a genuine connection.
Yeah, the man even invites Nick to go hydroplaning with him sometime. It's friendly, easy.
And Nick's about to ask his name when Jordan Baker shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And the man introduces himself.
I'm Gatsby, he says. And Nick has that famous reaction to his smile.
One of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance. It understands you, believes in you, sounds incredible.
It does, but then almost immediately, Nick gets a different impression. He sees him as an elegant young roughneck. Notes his formal way of speaking is almost absurd.
Senses he's picking his words with care, like it's practiced.
Right. And then, bam, Gatsby's whisked away by a butler for a phone call. From Chicago. Or Philadelphia. Adds another layer of mystery right there.
So these parties, the guests, the mystery, what's the point?
I think it highlights the superficiality, doesn't it? Hundreds come to drink his booze and enjoy the spectacle, but they don't know him, don't really care to. The guest list suggests a sort of desperate gaiety, people may be escaping something.
And Gatsby's mystery is part of the performance.
Seems like it. He's built this persona, this stage, and the rumors swirl around him because the real person is kept hidden. It's all part of the illusion.
An illusion he starts to peel back, slightly, when he has lunch with Nick.
Yeah, in that 42nd Street cellar, Gatsby gives Nick his backstory. Or a backstory.
Seems rehearsed, though. Son of some wealthy people in the Middle West, all dead now. Educated at Oxford, like all my ancestors.
Nick picks up on the awkwardness right away. How Gatsby hurried the phrase educated at Oxford, or swallowed it. And the geography mistake claiming San Francisco is in the Middle West.
Red flag right there.
Definitely. Gatsby goes on about living like a young Raja in Europe, collecting jewels, hunting, trying to forget something very sad.
Nick thinks it sounds like cliches, worn so threadbare. He's very skeptical.
Until Gatsby produces proof, or apparent proof.
The medal from Montenegro. Orderi di Danilo. For valor extraordinary, with his name on it.
And the photo. From Oxford, Gatsby with a cricket bat, Earl of Doncaster nearby. Tangible things.
And Nick thinks, then it was all true. The evidence overrides his skepticism, at least for a moment.
It's that push and pull with Gatsby. What's real, what's fabricated. But then at the same lunch, we meet someone who hints at the less glamorous reality. Meyer Wolfsheim.
Yeah, the description is memorable. Small, flat-nosed Jew, the nose hair, the tragic nose.
And those cuff buttons.
Ugh, the teeth. Finest specimens of human molars. It's designed to shock.
It absolutely is. And Wolfsheim tells that story about Rosie Rosenthal getting shot outside the Metropole. A real gangster event. Ties him firmly to the underworld.
And he talks about Gatsby. Calls him a man of fine breeding. Says Gatsby sought him out after the war, made a gun decision, and then Wolfsheim says,
I made him. That's the line. Heavily implying he set Gatsby up in business, likely illegal business. Bootlegging, shady bond deals.
So this lunch gives us the official story, the proof, and then the underworld connection. Very contradictory.
Exactly. It complicates Gatsby enormously. War hero, Oxford man, an associate of a notorious gambler who wears human teeth as accessories.
Meanwhile, Nick gets the real key to Gatsby's past from someone else entirely, Jordan Baker.
Right. Jordan tells Nick the story over tea. Back in Louisville, 1917, Gatsby was a young, penniless officer. Daisy was the beautiful, popular belle.
They fell in love, but her family disapproved, kept her from saying goodbye when he shipped out.
And then Jordan tells that incredible story about the night before Daisy's wedding to Tom.
Tom had given her pearls worth $350,000, an insane amount.
Jordan finds Daisy drunk, clutching a letter, presumably from Gatsby and the pearls, saying Daisy's changed her mind, wants to give the pearls back.
Total meltdown. They did put her in a cold bath. She tore up the letter.
Yeah.
And then married Tom the next day.
It's heartbreaking. Shows how strong her feelings for Gatsby must have been. But ultimately, the pressure, the wealth, the security Tom represented, it won out.
Jordan mentions their early marriage seemed okay, but then Tom had that car accident with the chambermaid in Santa Barbara, broke the woman's arm.
Yeah, it reveals Tom's character hasn't changed much. Daisy had their daughter, Pammy, the next spring. They lived abroad, came back, ended up in East Egg.
And Jordan puts it all together when Daisy reacts strangely to hearing Gatsby's name on Long Island.
Yeah.
Realizes it's the same Gatsby.
And this revelation changes everything about how we see Gatsby. His mansion, the parties, the wealth. It wasn't just random extravagance.
It was all for Daisy. He bought that house specifically to be across the bay from her.
Spent 5 years building this fortune, this persona, throwing these parties, hoping she'd wander in one night, or at least hoping to engineer a meeting.
It reframes his entire existence, that huge, slightly desperate romantic gesture.
So you have this complex picture now, the war hero image versus the Wolfsham connection. The source of his money is clearly shady, built on crime probably, but the motivation, it's this incredibly focused, almost obsessive love for Daisy.
And Daisy's choice back then. What does it say about her? Weakness, pragmatism,
Yeah.
trapped by her social world.
Probably a mix of all of those. The pressures on a woman of her class at that time were immense, but her inability to break away, even when clearly distraught, sets a pattern. And Gatsby's whole life becomes this attempt to rewind time, to recreate that past moment with Daisy, but now with the added power of immense wealth.
Which leads directly to the reunion, the tea party at Nick's house.
Set up by Nick at Gatsby's very nervous request.
Nervous is an understatement. Gatsby is a wreck beforehand, gets Nick's long cut, sends over flowers, arrives looking pale.
And then knocks over the clock on the mantelpiece. I'm sorry about the clock. It's so awkward. The initial moments when Daisy arrives are painfully stiff.
But then the rain stops, the sun comes out.
And Gatsby transforms. Nick says he smiled like a weatherman, like an ecstatic patron of recurrent light. Suddenly radiant. The mood completely shifts.
After tea, Gatsby wants to show Daisy his house. He's practically beaming with pride. My house looks well, doesn't it?
And he lets slip that it took him just 3 years to earn the money, contradicting the inheritance story he told Nick earlier.
Nick clocks that immediately. Another inconsistency.
Gatsby shows off everything. The grounds, the rooms, all his possessions, especially the shirts.
The shirts. Piles and piles of them. Imported silks, linens.
Stacked like bricks. And Daisy's reaction is just, wow. She buries her face in them and cries.
It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before.
It's not about the shirts, is it? It's the overwhelming display. The tangible proof of the wealth he's amassed, all directed at her. It's the lost years, the might have been. A moment heavy with symbolism, materialism, regret, the sheer weight of his dream.
He shows her other things, too. Photos.
Yeah, a picture of Dan Cody, the old yachtsman who was his mentor, calls him his best friend years ago. And a picture of himself younger, in yachting clothes. Little glimpses of his past, curated, of course.
Nick observes Gatsby's state during this. How he'd built this moment up for 5 years.
Poured all his creative passion into it. So intense that after the initial reunion, he seems almost deflated, run down like an overwound clock.
But then he looks at Daisy again, and his voice becomes that deathless song. They get lost in each other.
Completely absorbed. Nick feels like he's invisible, superfluous. They're locked in their own world, finally reunited.
It's incredibly intense, romantic,
Yeah.
but fragile. And the tension starts building again almost immediately, doesn't it? Leading to that trip to the city.
On that incredibly hot day, the hottest day of the summer, everyone's on edge. The decision to go to New York feels impulsive, maybe desperate.
And the car swap is significant. Tom insists on driving Gatsby's ostentatious yellow car, calls it a circus wagon.
While Daisy rides with Gatsby in Tom's more discreet blue coupe, Nick and Jordan end up with Tom in the yellow car. The pairings themselves feel loaded with tension.
And the drive takes them back through.
The Valley of Ashes. They stop for gas at Wilson's garage.
George Wilson looks physically ill. All run down, his face green in the sunlight. He's clearly suffering.
And Nick has this sudden insight. He realizes Wilson has figured out Myrtle is having an affair, that she has a secret life, just like
Tom realized Daisy has feelings for Gatsby back at the house. The parallels are stark.
Leads to Nick's thought about the only difference between men being between the sick and the well. Some can handle the blow, others break. Wilson is clearly breaking.
And then Myrtle appears in the window overhead.
Peering down at the cars below, utterly focused, unaware she's being watched.
And her expression, jealous terror. But she's looking at the wrong person.
Exactly. She sees Jordan Baker in the yellow car next to Tom, and she assumes Jordan is Tom's wife, Daisy. A fatal mistake, driven by jealousy. Crucial bit of dramatic irony.
This simmering tension finally explodes at the Plaza Hotel, in that sweltering, oppressive room.
Yeah, they rent a suite, try to make small talk the wedding downstairs, that guy Biloxi who pretended to be someone he wasn't. but it's just delaying the inevitable.
Tom pushes it, brings up Oxford again, presses Gatsby for details, trying to expose him.
Gatsby holds his own for a bit, but Tom gets increasingly agitated, fueled by the heat and the situation.
And then Tom launches into his big rant. The racist stuff again, but broader now. Defending family institutions, worried about intermarriage, positioning himself as a defender of tradition against people like Gatsby.
It's ugly. He's trying to discredit Gatsby, paint him as a threat to their entire world.
Gatsby tries to regain control, tells Tom flat out, your wife doesn't love you. She's never loved you. She loves me.
He demands Daisy tell Tom the truth. But it's too much for her. She cries out, oh, you want too much?
And then the devastating admission. I did love him once, but I loved you too.
You loved me too. Gatsby can barely believe it. It shatters his perfect illusion, the idea that she never loved Tom.
Tom jumps on it immediately. Even that's a lie. He attacks Gatsby directly now, using the Wolfsham connection. Common swindler, bootlegger, threatens to investigate him.
This is where Tom wins. He uses his insider knowledge, Gatsby's shady past, to destroy Gatsby's credibility in Daisy's eyes, and perhaps in his own. He reasserts his power.
And he's so confident he's won, he tells Gatsby to drive Daisy home in the yellow car. Says Daisy won't leave him now. It's incredibly arrogant, but maybe accurate.
It seems so. Tom, Nick, and Jordan drive back in the other car, Tom's blue coupe. Oh, wait, no, they were in the yellow car earlier, weren't they? Tom took Gatsby's yellow car.
Right. So Tom, Nick, and Jordan are driving back in the yellow car. Gatsby and Daisy are in Tom's blue coupe. No, wait, let me check the outline. Tom drove Gatsby's yellow car to the city. Gatsby drove Tom's blue coupe. Then Tom sends Daisy home with Gatsby, implying in Gatsby's yellow car. And Tom drives back with Nick and Jordan in his own blue coupe.
Got it.
Okay, so Tom, Nick, Jordan in the blue coupe. And as they drive back, Nick has that moment.
His birthday. He's 30.
Feels like a turning point. The portentous, menacing road of a new decade. A loss of youth, maybe. He feels lonely, sees Jordan's wan face. The weight of adulthood hits him.
This whole plaza scene is the climax, isn't it? The heat, the confinement, the raw emotion.
Absolutely. Daisy is trapped, unable to fully choose Gatsby or reject Tom. Her confession breaks Gatsby's idealized dream, and Tom uses his power, social status, knowledge of Gatsby's secrets to regain control. It's brutal. And Nick's 30th birthday adds that layer of personal reckoning, the end of some kind of innocence for him, too. And this confrontation, this emotional wreckage, leads directly to physical wreckage, back in the Valley of Ashes.
Driving back, they encounter the accident scene, the crowd, the flashing lights.
Tom's first reaction is just awful. Wreck. That's good. Wilson will have a little business at last. So callous.
Inside the garage, it's chaos. Wilson is distraught, rocking back and forth, crying, oh my God. Michaelis, the neighbor, explains what happened.
Myrtle ran out into the road, hit by a car, instantly killed.
The car didn't stop. Son of a bitch didn't even stop his car.
There were two cars. One going towards New York, one coming away. The one coming from New York, going maybe 30, 40 miles per hour, was the one that hit her. And the witness, described as a pale, well-dressed Negro, saw it clearly.
A big yellow car. New.
Tom immediately focuses on that. That goddamn coward, he didn't even stop his car. He knows exactly whose car that is.
But his instinct is pure self-preservation. He makes sure Wilson knows his car is blue, tells Wilson he just got there from New York, and then he twists the knife, tells Wilson that Wilson knows the car that did it. It was a yellow car.
He basically points the finger, doesn't he? Directs Wilson's grief and anger squarely at Gatsby. Nick and the other witness back up Tom's claim about arriving in the blue car, unintentionally helping his deflection.
Later that night, Nick finds Gatsby hiding in the bushes outside the Buchanan house, watching over Daisy.
Gatsby confirms it was the yellow car, and Nick asks the crucial question, was Daisy driving?
Gatsby hesitates, then admits, yes, but of course I'll say I was.
He explains how it happened. Daisy was upset, thought driving would calm her. Myrtle rushed out. Daisy swerved away, then panicked and swerved back, hitting her. Gatsby plans to take the fall.
Still protecting her, still clinging to that dream even now. His loyalty or obsession is absolute.
And while Gatsby watches from outside, Nick glimpses Tom and Daisy inside, through the kitchen window.
Sitting together, eating cold fried chicken and ale. There's this unmistakable air of natural intimacy. Nick says anybody would have said that they were conspiring together.
Not happy, not unhappy, just together. Reconnected in their shared crisis, retreating back into their privileged world, letting Gatsby take the heat outside.
Meanwhile, Michaelis is trying to comfort Wilson. Wilson is falling apart, fixated on revenge against the driver of the yellow car.
He reveals things he'd suspected about Myrtle the Bruises months ago, likely from Tom. Finding that expensive dog leash confirms she had a lover, someone with money.
And Wilson becomes convinced the driver murdered her, that it wasn't an accident, that her lover hit her and drove off. He's determined. I have a way of finding out. He ignores Michaelis' suggestion she might have been running away from him.
The next day, Wilson is traced walking towards West Egg. The inevitable tragic end follows quickly.
Gatsby's body found in the pool, shot. Wilson's body nearby. Murder-suicide.
The final devastating outcome. Wilson, maddened by grief and manipulated by Tom, kills Gatsby, believing him to be Myrtle's lover and killer. Gatsby dies protecting Daisy, killed for a crime he didn't commit by a man who was also a victim of the Buchanan's carelessness.
It's just layers of tragedy built on lies, illusions, and that casual cruelty of the wealthy.
In the aftermath, Nick feels responsible, tries to arrange a proper funeral for Gatsby.
But nobody wants to know. He calls people who came to the parties, tries to reach associates.
Gets Wolfsham on the phone, and Wolfsham refuses to get involved. Says he's sentimental, shows friendship when a man's alive, not after he's dead.
He tells that story again about finding Gatsby poor after the war, how he made him, basically washing his hands of Gatsby now that he's gone, and potentially smeckless.
It's a brutal illustration of how shallow those connections were. Hundreds at his parties, almost no one at his funeral. Nick feels ashamed he even stayed so late at that first party.
The only person who shows up, besides Nick, is Gatsby's father, Henry C. Gatz.
Comes all the way from Minnesota, having seen it in a Chicago paper. A solemn old man, totally overwhelmed.
He's grieving, but also has this odd pride in his son's success, the huge house. Still believes Jimmy was destined for greatness, like James J. Hill. Shows Nick that old copy of Hopalong Cassidy.
With young Gatsby's incredibly detailed self-improvement schedule written inside. Study, exercise, work, practice elocution, poise, and how to attain it. Shows that ambition was there from the very beginning.
It's poignant, a glimpse of the earnest young man behind the mysterious millionaire.
The funeral itself is pathetic. Just Nick, Mr. Gatz, the minister, a few servants, and owl eyes.
The guy from the library at the party, the one amazed the books were real, he shows up at the cemetery in the rain.
His final comment, the poor son of a bitch, sort of sums it up, doesn't it? A rough, but maybe fitting epitaph.
Before all this, though, Nick gives Gatsby his only compliment. Right after the accident, essentially.
You're worth a whole damn bunch put together.
It's a huge statement from Nick, considering his earlier reservations about Gatsby. He sees through the flaws, the illegality, maybe, and recognizes something more genuine in Gatsby's dream, his dedication, however misguided, compared to the emptiness and cruelty of the others.
After the funeral, Nick decides he has to leave the East. But first, he ties up loose ends, sees Jordan Baker.
It's an awkward, chilly meeting. She accuses him of bitching her over the phone.
And she throws his own words back at him. About bad drivers. Well, I met another bad driver, didn't I? Implying he was careless, dishonest.
Nick doesn't fight it much, just says he's 30 now. 5 years too old to lie to myself and call it honor. A kind of weary acceptance of complexity, maybe.
He leaves feeling angry and half in love with her and tremendously sorry. It's messy, unresolved.
And he runs into Tom Buchanan one last time on Fifth Avenue.
Tom tries to act normal, shake hands. Nick refuses initially. Tom gets angry, calls Nick crazy.
Nick asks him directly what he told Wilson that afternoon, and Tom admits it. Admits he told Wilson who owned the yellow car.
Justifies it, of course. Says Gatsby had it coming to him. Repeats the lie that Gatsby ran Myrtle down like you'd run over a dog and didn't stop. Claims Gatsby hurt Daisy, too.
Nick knows it's a lie, knows Gatsby was covering for Daisy. Tom even tries to paint himself as a victim, saying how he suffered crying over dog biscuits. It's pathetic.
And Nick delivers his final verdict on Tom and Daisy. The famous lines.
They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made.
Nails it. He shakes Tom's hand then, feeling like he's talking to a child. Realizes they'll never change, never take responsibility.
So Nick leaves, decides that East isn't for him. Feels he, Jordan, Tom, Daisy, Gatsby, they were all Westerners, somehow unsuited to the East, sees the East now as distorted, unreal, especially West Egg.
He reflects one last time on Gatsby, on his extraordinary gift for hope, his capacity for wonder, and that dream focused on the green light at the end of Daisy's dock.
That green light becomes symbolic of the future, the unattainable dream, the orgiastic future that year by year recedes before us. Always striving, never quite reaching.
And the book, the excerpts we have, end with that incredibly powerful, haunting image.
So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past.
Wow, what a journey through these passages. We've seen the huge gaps between rich and poor, the emptiness hiding behind the glamour, the terrible consequences of carelessness.
And the power and danger of dreams, especially dreams tied to recreating the past. How these characters chased versions of happiness or control, often colliding tragically.
Makes you think about what we chase, doesn't it? And what happens when our dreams crash into reality or into someone else's carelessness.
Definitely. And that final image, borne back ceaselessly into the past, it's profound. What does it really take to escape that pull? Is it even possible to just move forward, free from history?
A really provocative thought to end on. Something to mull over.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive, part of the Uncanny Valley podcast. We hope digging into these passages from The Great Gatsby gave you some fresh insights.
And maybe spark some curiosity to look closer at the stories around you. Thanks for listening.